Coming to you direct from Silencer Shop Studios, home of the Glass Case of Emotion.
SilencerShop.com, the easiest way to buy silencers online, period.
Stand by for education, enlightenment, enjoyment, and entertainment.
He's not here to talk about your feelings. He's not here to say what you want to hear. He's here to say what needs to be said.
Ladies and gentlemen, and children of all ages, please welcome your host, the pimp hand of America, Professor Paul Markle.
Yes, indeed, I am the pimp hand of America because this country needs a slap in the face. Maybe more than one.
Powder him.
But it needs at least one. And we are back. It's Tuesday. We've got even more Glenn Tate for you. And Trump and the Tramp. What is that all about? I'm sure that a large percentage, or at least a good percentage of you jumped in listening today and you have a predisposed notion or you have a preconceived notion about what you're going to hear. Park that. Close your mouth, open your ears, and listen louder. All right, it is Tuesday. It is we're going to do a quiet time today. But before we do that, let's go ahead and, well, thank our friend Glenn Tate for being here. Thank you for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed yesterday's show. And let's thank our friends at Century Arms, the sweetest smelling arms maker in the USA. Duracoat, because life is too short to have an ugly gun. Brownells at brownells.com. And if you've read 299 Days and you're prepared or you want to prepare for the end of the world or the breakdown of society, go to Brownells because they have their ESG, was it Emergency and Survival Gear? ESG, Emergency and Survival Gear. You can get food. You could even have them ship you water, which to me seems insane, but I guess people do it.
Did I tell you about when we were driving up to Atlanta for the fight last couple weeks ago, whenever it was?
Okay, no.
We went through a Burger King because it was the only thing on that exit. And we were going through the drive-thru, and there was a poster there that said, now hiring delivery drivers.
Burger King delivery drivers?
Burger King delivery drivers. Because people were too lazy to go get fast food.
There you go.
Wow.
All right.
Attention, new listeners. We produced a free training video series called 7 Training Tips That Could Save Your Life. We want you to have access to this life-saving information. Get instant access now at studentofthegun.com. Do you watch Student of the Gun TV, read the blog, and follow us on Facebook? If you answered no to any of those questions, you are wrong, but you can easily fix yourself. Go to studentofthegun.com to find everything SOTG.
Well, that's a great thing about here is if you're wrong, it's okay. You can fix yourself. And that's the good news. It's the good news. Sometimes you're wrong. It just happens. That's the way the world is. Sometimes you're wrong. But you have the opportunity to fix yourself here. And one of the ways you can fix yourself is by taking some SWAT fuel. SWAT fuel, 9mm, get them all out. 9mm plus B. And, of course, the 40 cal multivitamin. Go to SWATfuelstore.com. Use the promo code SOTG2015. If you do that, you're going to save yourself some money. Yeah. That's right.
You save a percentage of your SWAT fuel.
That's right. Frog Lube. It's green. It's minty fresh. You can get it at Brownells, and it is extreme. And Crossbreed Holsters, makers of the Freedom Carry, the Purse Defender, the Bedside Backup, and the Bruce Jenner Commemorative, sometimes known as the Super Tuck Deluxe.
That never gets old. Oh, man, I hope
he asked for it.
I really hope we pulled in some, political people that are watching Trump to look for anything that he says into this episode because of the title. And they just heard that, and they're going to freak out.
The Super Tuck Deluxe?
Okay, the Bruce Jenner.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly the... you mean some people are going to come, some Trump haters are going to come here thinking that we're going to do a Trump bashing and they're all excited because that's going to happen?
Yeah. Or Trump lovers, either way.
Well, who knows? Who knows what can happen? But it is Tuesday, and before we get back into it with Glenn Tate, and once we get going...
We're going.
So we're going to go ahead and knock out the quiet time early. For today's quiet time, we're going to talk about a book, and many of you those, at least 4,450 or 4,500, I don't know how many watched it. We did a video last Thursday. We did a special impromptu video. And while we were right in the middle of it, we were doing a live stream, Brown Santa showed up. And Brown Santa brought a package that I had ordered. I ordered the book, The Demon Sermon on the Martial Arts and Other Tales by Issei Chosanshi. And it was a gift from me to Jared so that he would have his very own copy. And many of you out there, you might be thinking, well, I don't know how many, but you're like, demon? That like demon, like devil worship? No. As in the mythical Japanese Tengu, the demons that supposedly that lived in the mountains of Japan and that passed down their swordsmanship to the monks and so forth. And essentially, the author uses the subjects of the demons to tell a story, to relate not just about swordsmanship, but about life and about function and about training and about tactics and about mentality and mindset and chi. And in chapter 4 of the Demon Sermon, I reread this. I actually read the entire book, and I started rereading it about a month or so ago. And as I read, it takes me a while to get through a book because as I read a book like this, I highlight it and I take notes. My books generally are filled with notes in the margins and basically everywhere where there's a blank area. And that's one of the reasons that when I publish books, that I leave blank areas on the pages. I do that deliberately because I really genuinely want you, when you pick up one of the books that we offer here, whichever one it happens to be, whether it's on, child rearing or patriotism or faith or whatever, or guns, that you'll do that with a pencil or pen in hand, and you'll take notes for yourself.
For those of you that haven't or don't know where to get our books, get Professor Paul's books, go to studentofthegungear.com, and the whole collection is there.
There you go, studentofthegungear.com. Chapter 4 begins like this. One of the other demons asked, in the traditional teachings on the spear, there is the straight spear, the cross-headed spear, the hook spear, the tube spear, and others. Which of these would be the most advantageous? The demon replied, how can you ask such a stupid question? The spear is a weapon for thrusting, and complete freedom in thrusting is within yourself, not the instrument. Now, you say, well, big deal, Paul. I don't have a spear, and I'm not going to have a spear, and who cares about spears? I'm going to reread that question in the year 2016. In the traditional teachings of the gun, there is the Glock, the Smith & Wesson, the SIG, the Beretta, and the Colt. Which of these is the best gun to have? And the demon replied, how can you ask such a stupid question? The gun is a weapon for shooting. The complete freedom in shooting is within yourself, not within the instrument. And you say to yourself, how is it that Issei Chosanshi was such a Nostradamus prophet? This book, this obviously was a topic, it was a subject, it was something that he thought needed to be addressed. This book was written in the early 1700s, going all the way back to the early 1700s. You had people that were more concerned about the tool than they were about the training or the application of that tool. Is it not amazing that we've been having these same discussions for quite literally hundreds of years? Now, there's way more than that in this book. There are way more things than that. It's funny to me that these authors, Sun Tzu, you got Musashi, you got this one right here. You read their books, which are literally, the works that were written hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and the questions and the solutions and the thoughts apply to what we're doing right now at this day. What did King Solomon say? He said, "There's nothing new under the sun. What has been will be again, and what is will be once more." Something. Forgive me, Solomon, for messing up your quote there. I thought you guys would appreciate that for our quiet time today. All right, and we're back with Glenn Tate, the author of 299 Days, a complete series. And I would be remiss if I didn't tell everyone where to go. Just go to 299days.com. That's the numbers 299days.com. And would you say, Glenn, that that's the best way for people to get started?
Yeah, you bet. And you can also just Google 299 days and all kinds of stuff will come up.
Now, let's talk about, I'm on the site right now, and the latest article by Glenn Tate is March 19, 2016, Trump and the Trump. And I don't want to specifically hammer on the article so much as the idea, and I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to posit this supposition, and I'll get your feedback on it. When Donald Trump entered the race, what is it, a year ago now or whatever? It was right after NRA last year, wasn't it, Jared? I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually saw. I didn't talk to Donald Trump at the NRA last year, but
that
I talked
was when
to
he announced
his two oldest sons. I believe so. It was right at that time frame. So it's been about a year, and a lot of people thought, "Oh, this is like every other election where you have these outsiders, whether they're actors or businessmen or whatever. You have all these outsiders." And they want to make a name for themselves, or they want to stir things up, so they throw their hat in the ring, and then they generate a little, because they're unique, they're outsiders, they're different. They get some free press for a while, but it doesn't last very long. And we've had that for the entire history of our, at least since I've been alive. You remember like the Alfred E. Newman for president and Pat Paulson for president and all that kind of thing?
I remember Alfred E. Newman. I'm in my late 40s, by the way.
Oh, okay. Well, then Pat Paulson, everyone's running to their Google right now to look it up. There's a guy named Pat Paulson that ran for president every year. I think Rich Little did one year, the Alfred E. Newman for president. It's always been kind of every 4 years we have kind of the joke, right? People are like, well, yeah, that's funny, but let's get serious. Only the people who have been anointed by the party are actually eligible to be president. But it really looks here in, April of 2016 that Donald Trump could legitimately get the Republican nomination. And why is that?
Yeah, why is it? The Republican Party as a whole, and I'm going to generalize. Everything I say is about to be generalized, so, if you get listeners all mad at you or me, realize it's generalizations. The Republican Party establishment, certainly, is absolutely broken, has no credibility. I think we all know that. There's no other explanation for the rise of Donald Trump other than people, including me, probably you guys too, are disgusted with the sellout Republican establishment that, seems to be for not only for immigration, but heck, we're going to take veterans benefits away and fund all kinds of stuff for, Muslim immigrants coming to the United States. I mean, it's outrageous. So that's what I think's fueling it. And you mentioned that that article. It was Trump and the Tramp, by the way, a little play on words.
I'm sorry.
On Trump and the Tramp, this will kind of explain where I'm coming from what it's worth. And I am a political guy in a sense. I work on campaigns and do that kind of stuff. And so I'm completely jaded. I've seen all the yucky establishment stuff, and I can tell you it's probably worse than you guys think it is. But Trump and the Tramp is about a friend of mine who left his wife for a waitress. And in this story, the wife is symbolically the Republican establishment. My friend is your average Republican voter who's disillusioned with things. And the Tramp is Donald Trump. And let me explain. My friend wasn't, there was no love. There was no warmth at home. He was frustrated. He was being taken advantage of. That's how I think a lot of us, I call myself a former Republican. I'm a libertarian. But how we feel about the party. So there's no affection. There's no real relationship. It's one-way street. It's being taken advantage of. And then somebody sparkly and appealing and nice and listening to us, the waitress in this case, catches the guy's eye and the waitress isn't a horrible person. I don't think Donald Trump's a horrible person. And the waitress, I mean, she wants to hook up with this guy. I mean, he's a great guy, and he can take care of her kids. But she's not being idealistic about it. I think opportunist is too strong of a word, but I mean, she assumes everybody understands what the deal is, and so the guy, the average Republican voter, tells his wife, "Hey, I've met somebody new. I'm going to go off in this other direction." And what does the wife/Republican establishment do? She says, "Oh my goodness, that's a tramp. That's a horrible person. That's an illegitimate person. That's not right." Which is exactly what the establishment is saying about Donald Trump. And then in my story, the relationship between the friend and the waitress didn't work out, and my friend kind of restored faith and found a woman who had restored faith, and they both had reasonable expectations, and they both had some grounding, and they're doing just fine. So I hope that's how this turns out. So I don't begrudge Donald Trump, but I really think that his popularity is explained by the fact that the establishment Republican Party has abandoned, it's probably the best word, their voters. And it should not be surprising at all what's going on. And that's not like a pro-Trump or anti-Trump thing.
It's just reality.
My friend.
And that's
like I see it.
Yeah, the crazy thing about the world that we live in is that you point out, it's that people that refuse, it's almost the emperor's new clothes thing. You've got these people in D.C. and people are like, we've talked about it innumerable times on the show, but in the District of Columbia, the people who inhabit that hive of just, we think, you and I sit out in the country, and I don't know about you, but I look at D.C. and I think it's like Gomorrah, but they don't understand what the peasants are bitching about. They're like, life is good here in the District of Columbia. We have plenty of money. We go out to parties. We drink. We eat Kobe beef. I mean, we're having a great time. What is the problem with these peasants? Why can't they be satisfied? And, who did we have on, Jared? Oh, we had David Benner, the author of Compact of the Republic. And we were talking about how we devolved away from what was supposed to be a really hardcore representative republic where the people were beholden to their voters. And it was all set up, especially the senators. When we, was it the 17th Amendment? The 17th Amendment really screwed us because people, unfortunately, our ancestors, our grandfathers and great-grandfathers and so on, many of them really and truly believed in their hearts that people in the United States government, they might have been fallible and they might have been human, but they would never do anything to deliberately subvert the Constitution. They would never do things that were deliberately wrong. They may have made mistakes and they may be human, but in the end, everyone in D.C., whether they're Democrat and Republican, they have the best interest of the United States and the people of the United States at heart. That is the, I'm sure that my grandfather went to his deathbed feeling that. My dad, for the longest time, I talked to my dad, and the mentality of our predecessors was, I know that I don't like these guys maybe, but in the end, we're all Americans and we're all doing what's best for the country. But then you and I, in our generation, we step back and we look and we observe and we see what's going on in the nation, the realities, it's not conspiracy. If it's actually happening right in front of you, it's not paranoid conspiracy. But, and so we allowed these people to we assumed that they were all up there taking care of business, that they were concerned about us. And we find that that's not the case. We find that they're more concerned about maintaining the status quo, maintaining the power base, than they are about doing what we sent them there to do. And that's why Donald Trump, I believe, that's why people like losing their minds, traditional Republican conservative, like, you people are so stupid. You're so stupid. You're supporting this Trump. Don't you know what an error you're making? And we all look at him, we're like, bro, 2010, 12, 14, all these people who claimed to be outsiders, all these Republicans who said, hey, you know, you don't like Obama and you don't like his policies, elect us, we'll fix it. So we do. And then 6 months later, they look at us and they're like, well, you guys just don't understand. It's not that easy to fix things. Just give us some more time. I think a good percentage of the American populace is getting ready to say, no, we've given you enough time to fix yourself, and you obviously don't want to do it.
I can attest to everything you're saying on a personal level. Being in the political / lobbying / law business here in the state capital of Washington State, I've had friends that have gone off to D.C. to do staff positions and other things, and it's remarkable how quickly they change. I mean, they start off, and they're friends of mine. They're hardcore conservatives, you know, fun-loving, decent, you know, what I consider good people, and you think you know them. And they get seduced. You mentioned Gomorrah, classic example. I'll tell you something that really surprised me. I hadn't been to D.C. in a number of years, and I went a couple of years ago. I could not believe just the wealth. I mean, all the fancy stores. I mean, it reminded me of downtown Seattle, which has got gazillions of dollars pouring into it with high-tech stuff. It's very, very wealthy and trendy. I thought I was in downtown Seattle, and that was just in some of the suburbs in Virginia. The money just oozes everywhere. And this friend of mine, here's a classic way to describe how he went from being a hardcore movement, conservative, Ronald Reagan kind of guy. Last time I talked to him, he was working at a lobbying firm for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
And we don't talk anymore. That's what happens to people in that town. And it's money, it's power, it's women, men, I guess, I don't know, whatever it is. It's that stuff.
All of the above.
And it's the power, and it's intoxicating.
Well, in our founding fathers, this is nothing new in human history. This is pretty old. As a matter of fact, that's the history of man, is when anytime you give men the opportunity to either to rule over or to gain power over their fellow man, or to become part of the elite, part of the ruling class, whatever, they're going to do it. That's just the way it is. It's the history of the world, not just the United States. But our founding fathers, those crazy old dudes, they were so well-versed in the history of man that they understood that the only way, or the best way, was to essentially put the brakes on, or to put limits on that. And that was the big thing about senators. 100 senators. And so these guys, they go to D.C. today, and they basically become 100th of an emperor. They're one of 100 people that are part of this imperial ruling class. And what do you say to somebody from your state, from Idaho or from Washington or from wherever, when they get to D.C. and they're immediately inundated with, the perks and this, and they like it. They like it. They don't dislike all of the Kobe beef and the scotch and the hookers and the whatever, and they don't want to leave there. Where when your state reps, I'm going to give a great example, or at least a classic example. The farther away you get from your home, the farther, I guess, from the county. I'm sure you're very familiar with the term posse comitatus. But
yes.
The farther away from the county you get, the less accountable to the people you become. Let's face it, you and I come from a relative. Well, I was born in Detroit, but we escaped and we fled to rural Ohio when I was a teenager, and I grew up there and went to high school there. But in a small community, you know who the sheriff is, you know who the mayor is, you know the people that are on the council, and if they step too far out of bounds, it becomes very, very apparent, and you can clean that house up pretty quick. If a local sheriff's deputy is on the take, is abusing people, if a local sheriff's deputy, just summarily executes a citizen, for a traffic stop or whatever, you can take care of that guy. That guy's going to be punished. But you take somebody who's a member of a federal bureaucracy, who's headquartered in D.C., his bosses are in D.C., and you send that guy to Oregon or Utah or Texas or wherever, he doesn't give one rat's rear end about the people in that county he currently has his feet in Utah. They're not his boss. He doesn't care about them. And you ask, you go back to the Ruby Ridge, you go back to the Waco, you go to the most recent thing, and where was that? Was it Oregon? Where was the Bundy, the second one?
It was up
in
in
Oregon. You go there,
Oregon.
and you say, well, how can this happen? If the sniper team that killed Randy Weaver's wife, she's standing there holding the door open with a child in her hand, puts a 308 bullet through her head. If that sniper team would have been comprised of 2 deputies from the local county sheriff's office, those guys would have been tried, imprisoned, and that'd have been it. And the chances of a county sheriff's team putting a bullet through a woman's head, probably pretty slim, right? Because they're members of the community. They know these people. They have to answer to the community. When you send people from D.C. out into the world to execute your authority, they don't care about those people. Those people are peasants to them. And you're like, oh, come on, Paul, you're being mean and harsh and nasty. No, I'm being 100% real. When you send ATF, FBI, hostage roasting team, whatever, you send them out into the flyover country, they view the locals as peasants, as a subservient class. And in the case of the Ruby Ridge thing, the sniper team that executed Weaver's wife, they weren't even punished. They were transferred. One of them was sent to Quantico to become an instructor to teach other HRT guys how to kill people's wives. This is the insanity that we live in our world. And when you allow the authority to be that far removed from the county, that is exactly the tyranny you get. And Jefferson, Washington, Adams, they all knew that. They understood it. That was the whole problem with the king and Parliament. They're thousands of miles away. You think the king and Parliament give a rat's butt of what happens in Pig Snort, Pennsylvania? No. Look at how far D.C. is removed from Washington State. It's like 2,900 miles, I think, if my geography is right. No, I know I ranted a little bit.
It's a long plane flight, and I everything you said I've seen with my own eyes. The friend of mine in D.C. Was visiting, and some local constituents had come into town to talk to their congressman. Right? I mean, what's more American than that? And this guy's attitude was this: my friend, the staffer, is kind of rolling his eyes, like, "Oh God, we got to make time for this." Yada yada yada. You need to, I don't know, whatever it was, put more water through this dam because we need the electricity. Blah blah blah. It was like you're right. The peasants were burdening the congressman. It was almost a shock that, nobody said this, but my sense of it was, why do these little people get to talk to somebody who's important? I mean, and now I'm making this up, but this gives you the flavor of the conversation. Like my boss needs to go to a fundraiser and raise money from some PAC for some other thing. I mean, that's what really matters. And it's really broken. And at the state level, because I interact a lot with state government, I see something kind of what you were talking about, and that is this bunker mentality. I describe it in the book, where some of the local officials, they feel, and I'm generalizing, but a lot of them feel like the public, they're all like gun-toting right-wing wackos, and that, if the public just had a chance, it would like shoot these people, none of which is true. And there's a great meme out there, 200 million firearms and over 2 trillion rounds of ammunition are legally owned by Americans. If we were a problem, you would have heard of it by now, right? And so we're obviously the most peaceful people, there are. And so it's not really a problem, but they get this bunker mentality, and they think they need all these protective people to keep the peasants at bay, like there's, pitchforks and torches coming their way. Maybe they feel a lot of the anger that's out there. And so, it pervades how they go about governing. And I'm talking about Republicans too here. You're right. It's all flipped up and upside down. You mentioned your grandfather. my grandfather, war hero, American Indian. I mean, this classic American kind of guy. Great, great man. I can't even imagine trying to even explain to him current events. He's passed, but he would be so disappointed. By the way, lifelong Democrat, FDR kind of Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, solid American. And he would basically say, oh, yeah, people, we have some political differences, but we're all Americans, exactly what you were talking about. And it's not my grandpa's country anymore. It's a bunch of millennial Bernie Sanders people now, and it's sad.
Yeah, we have people that legitimately believe in their heart of hearts that they are an elite class, that they, what's funny, we talked about, it was earlier the week about the DC shooting or the Capitol shooting, and it was like all over the news, and they shut down the city, and all the important people need to be protected. And I'm sure did you see it about basically a guy pulled out an air gun, and the only actual live fire that was done was by Capitol Hill police. And but they shut the city down. They went into a crisis mode, White House under lockdown, and all this. And my first, sadly, most people, I'm afraid, just assume that, well, that's exactly the way it should be. And from my standpoint, I say, so first of all, that was just a tempest in a teapot. Cops shoot people every day. We don't shut down, the entire city. It's like today, blah, blah, blah. There's a guy outside of a courthouse and police shot him. Everyone hide in your houses. Like, what? Hide in your houses till we give you the all clear. And all the, quote, important people, the ruling class people, you have their minions just come out of the woodwork. I mean, you just watch any channel, CNN, Fox, doesn't matter. You see dozens, hundreds of federal agents, and they got their black rifles, and they're running around, and they're looking, and they're like standing at gates and standing outside of posts. And I'm like, whoa. So we have to make sure that the king and the parliament are being protected from what? I mean, we don't even know. We don't even know what's going on. They had no idea. But the reaction is the king. How many movies have you seen where it's like, protect the king, and the musketeers or whatever, they run around and they encircle the king.
I had a couple people message us and saying that they agreed with what happened because that could have been a distraction for a bigger attack. You know how Haji still
really
like a little small thing.
No, they're actually. You know how they do that. The people that they're not that smart. Yeah.
Well, and if you've drawn hundreds or thousands of protective people to an air gun, then you've done exactly. If it is a big distraction, you've done exactly. You as the bad guy have done exactly what you want. So if distraction is the issue, then don't have all your reserve forces go over to one direction and leave some other place wide open.
Well, I'm 100% against the shelter in place. I think all that does is teaches people to be subservient cowards. It teaches them to be peasants. It ingrains in their head that your life is not your own to protect or preserve. Your life is only going to be preserved or protected if a member of the state decides to. Only the state.
Your life is something to be managed by the authorities.
Exactly. Yes, you have no, if somebody from the state, if a state authority tells you to hide under your desk, that is what you're going to do. And you're going to stay there until he tells you you can leave. What?
And that sentiment is described at length in the books about how people react. And I imagine myself here. I live in a very liberal place. My goodness, the state capital of Washington State. Are you kidding me? I mean, there are various measurements of liberalosity, another word I just made up. See, I'm an author. I get to do that, right? I get to make up words. But the liberalosity around here is unbelievable. And I kind of close my eyes and imagine what my neighbors, for example, would do. And they're all a bunch of liberals and stuff and work for state government. And how they would shelter in place, how they would follow directions. And then in the book, the directions from the authorities become, progressively more insane and silly, and delusional and suicidal, and these sheep are just following along, and you see how it plays out, with larger numbers. And I think that will be what happens. I think that one of the biggest challenges preppers, gun owners, decent people are going to be all these completely unprepared, completely entitled sheeple that freak out, and then they realize that the government's not taking care of them, and then they're going to come knocking on our doors. And how do we handle that? Tactically, how do we handle that morally, being the more important question? Because that tactical answer is actually pretty easy.
Yeah.
It's the moral one that's hard.
Yeah.
And how are we going to handle that? So, yeah, you're right. That whole be good little sheep, a lot of it comes from public schools and in workplaces now. I mean, that's a common thing. We're kind of in the worst possible position, American people in general, to weather any kind of difficulty. It's pretty much we're the weakest mentally, spiritually that we've ever been.
You're absolutely right.
We have the biggest threats pointed at us right now at the very time we're the least sort of tough and mentally prepared. We're the least like my grandfather. That's what I mean.
Absolutely. I mean, and we actually shared the Know Thy Neighbor during the class part 1, the unprepared neighbor. We shared that on our Facebook page, and people jumped all over it. And but you're absolutely right, and we could spend a lot more time talking about this. But we said one of the things I've said is, look, we don't need the good guys. We don't need more guns. How dare you? This is student of the gun. No. We have enough guns. We have enough ammo. What we are at a critical shortage of is leadership and courage. And those are things you can't run down to Academy at Outdoors and buy.
I think that from our grad program members, we had the 14 leadership traits that America is starving for. That article, the tactical tutor that you did for them, that's been their favorite so
That's
far.
the number one
that's the
favorite.
Number one.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that proves that America is starving for leadership.
Starving for leadership.
Look at Donald Trump.
They don't even understand. I mean,
there you go.
Yeah, really. And sadly, things that you and I learned, you're in your 40s, I'm in my 40s, things that we learned in elementary school that we just assume that everybody knows or understands is foreign to many of these kids. They've never even heard it. But Jared, we're 42 minutes into this interview, and I know we've got questions from the audience. Are you ready to address some audience questions?
Yeah, we'll pull the audience questions for tomorrow's radio show.
Hey, one thing, could I add? I hate to interrupt, but one of your sponsors, I have to say great things about. I'm not getting paid for. Century Arms. I love those guys. That C39 version 2 is the most magnificent AK I've run across. I'm an AK aficionado. I love those things. And when I was reminded that Century Arms is one of your sponsors, I was like, those are super legit AKs, and everyone ought to have at least one of them. Thank you. I feel better now.
For those of you that have not done it yet, go to studentofthegun.com, click the orange button, and sign up for the 7 training tips that could save your life. And remember, you can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, studentofthegun.com, studentofthegunradio.com. We have a mobile app, Roku, Amazon Fire, and please, if you have one of our products, go leave a review on studentofthegungear.com.